Exactly where I'm standing is where World War One started.
The last leg of my Balkan trip would take me to Sarajevo in Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is me heading there from Podgorica in Montenegro. So, this is some of the Montenegrin countryside as we were driving north and then entering into the Republic Srpska in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And the Republic of Srpska, not to be confused with Serbia or the Republic of Serbia itself, is one of the two entities that comprise Bosnia and Herzegovina, the other being the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So I could see how the welcome sign would potentially throw some people off. And as far as interesting political structures, Bosnia and Herzegovina probably takes the cake. Over the 3 days I was here, I learned a lot more about the political structure of the country. And let's just say that even an expert in Bosnia and Herzegovinian relations would have a hard time deciphering or explaining exactly what happens. There are three different political major parties, and they each have their own president, and it's a whole thing. So this is the beginning of my first day here, pretty much walking from the bus stop to my hostel. The area I just showed with all the pigeons is the Boscar Sija, which is kind of like the main central area of town. This is the main pedestrian walkway through town here. All these roads are just lined with different bakeries and coffee shops and craftsmen who hand make everything out of brass. Really tremendous place to be. In my hostel was actually just off of that. And as I was walking around during this time before I actually heard the reasoning for it later, I saw a bunch of interesting things like people refusing to jaywalk there. Then I came up on this group of what seemed to be angry Bosnian men, uh, very aggressively playing chess there on the life size board. And every time I walked by over the next 3 days, there was a different crew of people cheering this on, just like you were at a huge sporting event. And this beautiful structure there is the Sarajevo City Hall, which I later heard the architect was given instructions to not make it too gaudy.
I'm walking through the main little drag here, getting ready to start a walking tour. And this area over here is just overrun with pigeons that everyone plays with, and it's super interesting. Also, there are these very tiny crosswalks right outside my hostel, and they're just like not even one full lane of traffic to get to the other side, and people refuse to jaywalk. Super interesting.
While a wee bit hesitant before arriving in Sarajevo, I was instantly put at ease with the entire vibe of the place where East kind of met West. Here on Copper Street, all of these coppersmiths are hand engraving all these different things from bookmarks. And then what I found the most interesting thing was the bullets, shell casings, cannon shot that had gotten hand engraved to take some weapon of destruction and make it into some type of beautiful art. Obviously, Bosnia is known for being a turbulent place and having a lot of violence and wars. And in fact, when it comes to wars, here is the exact place that World War One started, where Gabriel Prince shot Archduke Franz Ferdinand in 1914. His footprints are cemented into the ground so people can know exactly where he stood when he fired the three shots, the one that ultimately started the war. Right here, this is called the meeting of the cultures. On the ground, it says where East meets West. And if you look one direction here, you see Austrian and European architecture. Then as you spin to the other side, you see Middle Eastern architecture. So it's a super interesting dichotomy of two cultures there. Sarajevo also had some really awesome kind of hipster, artsy streetwear places like this one right here. This one was one called Royale with Cheese, where I got just a couple postcards and a couple of tiny souvenirs. There's also tons of street art, and a lot of it that doesn't paint the Western world, especially the United States, in a good light. So I took photos of all these because I think it's very powerful to see that the eyes of a different culture looking back at us. And here's some non-political street art that I just found very interesting. I always love examining the street art in all of these places.
Fun fact, because earlier I said I don't know why people around here never jaywalk. Our tour guide said that jaywalking is a 25 mark fine, which is $12.50, and it's super enforced, and the cops will fine you for everything in Sarajevo. In fact, he also said that a big thing that a lot of cops do is pull over tourists to find them because they can't really do anything about it. But if you rented a car and you get a speeding ticket, that you should just go ahead and tell the rental car company that, because then when they turn it in, the locals only have to pay half that fine. So if you were to get fined $25, then you'd only actually have to pay $12.50 as the rental car company. And I find that super interesting. He said a lot of cops actually lost their jobs and got into a lot of trouble for quote unquote writing those tickets and then paying them only half of them and just taking the money directly from the tourists. And he said they got caught because eventually people realized they weren't cashing their regular paychecks. Instead, they were just using the speeding ticket money to make their entire salary. So, super interesting thing to learn. So it might sound weird, but one of the things I love to do when traveling is when I run out of pages in my notebook, making a game of going around a city and just trying to find a blank notebook, because I journal every single day that I've ever traveled. And so now I have a big old stack of notebooks with a bunch of really crazy stories. And I try not to buy notebooks at home in the United States because I like making an adventure of trying to find notebooks when I'm traveling, because sometimes it gets very, very tricky. So I found a shopping mall that's right behind me, the Sarajevo City Center shopping mall, and it had no places with notebooks. And I know a lot of places I go in Europe, I can try to find a Flying Tiger Copenhagen store, but I don't think there's any of those around here. So we're just gonna keep going. It looks like there's another complex or two across the street that have multiple things in them, and let's see how those go.
Another really cool part I found about the city was Sarajevo was the host of the 1984 Winter Olympic Games, and they take great pride in that. There's stuff all over the city referencing hosting the 1984 Winter Olympics. And a big tourist site, even though I didn't get to go to it during my stay here, is the bobsled and luge track they built for the 1984 Winter Games. It's just a wee bit of a walk from where I was, and now it's covered in all sorts of different graffiti and art. And it looks really fascinating. I regret that I didn't get the opportunity to go see it. And there I am back at Baskercija having a Bosnian coffee, very similar to a Turkish coffee, but the Bosnians let me know that it is significantly better. In fact, I ended up drinking it completely wrong because I didn't realize that when they bring you these three little cups, the tiny one has a sugar cube, and you pour the coffee out of the brass instrument is into there to melt the sugar cube. If you drink from the brass holder of the coffee, you will in fact drink a whole lot of coffee grounds. And right off the Baskercija, this is my hostel, which was a very cool place. In fact, there were a couple nights where it was only myself and one other very interesting Bosnian fellow. At another point, there were two girls from America that came in and they shared the room with me. And then we also met a handful of French gentlemen.
And just taking in my last little afternoon. It's a dreary and dark one. and back to the United States starting early tomorrow morning. And I have a 20-hour travel day. Sarajevo, Frankfurt, Chicago, then back to Indianapolis. Hopefully all of that goes off without a hitch.
Here's a shot of Shepard Fairey's artist rendition of Andre the Giant, the Obey sticker, at the site of the shooting that started World War One, which just goes to show that American culture has permeated the entire planet. This right here is burek, one of the best foods I've ever had, which is a Bosnian dish. It's like a light, flaky pastry wrapped around pretty much anything. I got mine around different types of meat, but they can also be, vegan and have spinach or all sorts of other options, and it was delicious. For just a couple dollars each day, I went to that same spot and got myself some burek. My tour guide recommended that was the place to go. And then here's the main drag in Sarajevo at night, just all lit up and gorgeous. There being the biggest mosque in the city as well, right here off of the main drag. And then I started my very, very long trip home through several layovers, a very long hour city bus just to try to get to the airport. As I got off the city bus, I started to walk, and a stray dog led me all of the way to the airport. And it was very interesting because the walk was through residential neighborhoods. So I went through housing additions and apartment complexes to reach the airport, which just seemingly came out of nowhere. And then the dog let me off right outside the door at Sarajevo International Airport. And my entire flight home was decently smooth after wondering how I was going to get all the way from Sofia, Bulgaria to Sarajevo for my flight. I was able to do it. I have several videos online too explaining that entire journey if you'd like to hear more about it.
Hey guys, Jake here. On this trip that you've been following along with me, I made it to 6 countries. I only got paid to come over and work in one of them. I went to 5 others recreationally, places I'd never been. They were all amazing. I did it for so little money. It is crazy because I have now over 10 years of experience traveling internationally. I have 40 countries under my belt, and I want to give you the tricks. I want to give you the tips. I want to get you to those places. I don't want you taking one vacation every year or 2 or 3 years or once every never, when you can make this happen. You can go where you want and figure it out, and you can do it cheaply. I knock out how to get a flight for cheaper, how to stay somewhere for cheaper, how to get around when you get there for cheaper. This is it. This is my book. It's Go for Broke. $12.99 for the print copy on Amazon. You can hit me up. I'll give you a PDF for $5. If you use it for just 1 tip, I promise it will pay for itself immediately. So if you could pick one of those up and then rate and share it, that would be very great. Thanks.